that you put about the distance as a measure for, let's say, genetic differentiation. But there is good amount of data available for snow leopard range or movement through collaring. A lot of collaring has been done in Nepal and other places. So from just purely from that information, we should also that whether your hypothesis actually makes a valid hypothesis that in this distance, we would expect there to be a genetic differentiation. And there's a lot of data available, so you may as well put your hypothesis based on the available information.
Do you have any more questions? Thank you, Vishnu. Now move on to our second presenter, Ms. Roshmi Bordaman. She will be presenting on assessing the impact of, I'm very sorry, our second presenter is Mr. Malsong Dongiana. He is going to present on assessing the impact of the traditional practice of crop consumption on amphibian population from Mizoram, India, culture, nature perspective. Sorry, I'm not wearing my specs.
Good afternoon to everyone. So the realm of heritage has two distinct class, called culture and nature. But though these two seem very distinct and different, but actually they are inseparable. So knowing this significance, the UNESCO World Heritage Center shifts its focus towards the regional cultural linkage. And food is one such linkage which is among the many indispensable elements that is used for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage of the world. So this photo gives about shrimp fishing on horseback by Belgium and the making of kimchi by South Korea. And here I have to mention one thing which I do not put on my slide is that the other fishing in Bangladesh is also part of their cultural tradition. So historically, we know that human beings have taken their food from the wild sources, and a substantial proportion of culture in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are taking amphibians as food for their local consumption. The Global Amphibian Assessment states that about 220 species of amphibians are used as food worldwide. So, 1996-2006 data from Black Street shows that Indonesia is the top exporter of crocodiles in the world, while France is the top importers of crocodiles. Coming to the Indian scenario, India was the largest exporter of crocodiles from 1950s until it was banned in 1987. It was banned because of the disease outbreak like malaria due to the collapsing of the crop population. So, however, the case is that several tribes in Northeast India are still harvesting frogs for their personal consumption and their local delicacy, and they are sold in markets. And they are also used as a traditional medicine, which we can see that in Arunachal Pradesh, frog meat are considered to give longevity in life. And in Assam, they think that it gives asthma and bronchitis. In Nagaland, they are used for the treatment of gastritis, blood flows and burns. And in Sikkim, they are used for the treatment of cough, cold, diarrhea and piles. So now, coming closer to my study site. Mizoram is a part of Northeast India and it's part of the Indo-Burman biodiversity hotspot and an unique diversity of and indeed biodiversity is present, especially with the habitat of fauna. But through the social media posts, we found that the local consumption of frog is still prevalent and harvesting from one source is very large. So, and biodiversity being a part of the natural heritage, so this gives me an interest to see the major cultural linkage in the aspect of frog consumption in the region. So with that, I came to my title, Assessing the Impact of Traditional Practice of Frog Consumption on Amphibian Population from Mizoram India. It's a cultural perspective. I am a Samsung and I am a student in the heritage course. And my supervisors are Dr. Abhijit Das, Dr. Nitin Kohli and Dr. Samuel Arora. So coming to my study site, Dampa Tiger Reserve is located in the westernmost part of Mizoram, in Mani district. And the first objective for my study is to assess the diversity and relative abundance of frogs across selected two streams. So here we hypothesize that the abundance of frog species is lesser in the buffer stream compared to the core. So we selected two streams, one in the buffer zone and one in the core zone. So we did for the methods we did time constant visual and counter survey, where the stream was divided into four segments of 150 meters each and each at least 100 to 200 meters away from the park. And here we assume that because it is time constant for 1 hour, we assume that the frog does not go from one portion to another in the survey. So this 150 meter is surveyed for 1 hour for in one night. So we did 3 replicate which goes that which give a total time effort of 12 hours in one stream. So totally for the two streams we did a total effort of 24 hours. Now comparing male and female frogs. So for comparing male and female frogs, we use size, call and a vocal sac. This is a vocal sac, and vocal sac are present only in male frogs. And I categorize the frog species into large body frog species and small body frog species. Measurements we do not do on field, so we took measurements from already published literature and frog species which can attain at least a southern length of 15 millimeters, and their adult size are considered as large body frog. And those that cannot attain 50 millimeters are considered 50 millimeters are considered as small body frogs. So for this objective I use FAST for creating box plot, Excel for descriptive analysis, and R to prepare species accumulation plot using the INEX technique. So these 9 species are the species recorded in the buffer zone, and these 14 species are recorded in the core. So coming to my first question, how the species richness and relative abundance vary across the selected stream? So totally I recorded 16 species in the study, and 9 species are recorded in the buffer, 14 species are recorded in the core. 7 species are recorded mutually in the two sites, while 2 species are exclusive to the buffer and 7 species are exclusive to the core. The species accumulation curve, the red line is the of the buffer and the blue line is of the core. Shows a symptoms which indicates that the visual encounter survey, the tools indicate the efficacy of the visual encounter survey. So I put the Shannon diversity index, diversity evenness index to see the species diversity and evenness. So the core has more species richness, and also species are more diverse in the core, evenly distributed in the core. So coming to the relative abundance, we can see that Amolophyndum burmanensis, Odorrana chlorrhyncha, and Cibrillana antipa are the abundant species in the buffer zone. Coming to the core as well, Amolophyndum burmanensis, Cibrillana, Odorrana chlorrhyncha, and Calolopus are found abundant in the core zone. So comparing the common species between the two streams, I found that these species, Amolophyndum burmanensis, are the most abundant species in both the streams, followed by Odorrana chlorrhyncha. So second question is that is there any difference between the male and female ratio between the streams? So in the buffer, the number of encounters of male is higher than female, and I did many test to see if there is any significance, and it shows that they are significant. In the core also, the number of male encounters is higher, and the male test shows a significant value. So for the large body frogs, I found 7 species of the large body frogs in the buffer zone, and 9 species of large body frogs in the buffer zone. So I did a manual test to see if there is a significance between the species of the large body frogs in the streams, and I found that they are significant. Now coming to my second objective, process the consumption pattern of frogs and its cultural significance in the study area. So we hypothesized that frogs are an essential component of food security for the local communities. So for this objective, I selected 4 villages: Lalan village, Episode Community village, Terai. It's a mixed type of reserve and blue community. The Parekwe blue community dominated village and Chakma community dominated village. So we did random sampling. At least 10% of the households were sampled in each village, and a semi-structured interview questionnaire and interactions with the local people are done to gather data. So I use Microsoft Excel for the descriptive analysis and R for preparing modeling. So I found that of the 40 households sampled in the area, 55% says that they collected frogs. And in the Parekwe, out of 80 households, 81.25% are saying that they collected frogs. In Rajiv Nagar, out of 100 samples, 76% are saying that they collected frogs. And in Lalan village, out of 40 samples, 65% are saying that they collected frogs. So which brings me to my first question: what are the factors determining collection in the area? So I did generalized median modeling to see which model suits the best, and I found that the direction between tribe and gender is the best model. So the summary of this model gives me that the male of the Chamba tribe shows a significant value, and they are collecting frogs more. So here is a tribe-wise data which shows the frog collection. So out of 75% of the blue tribe who collected frogs, there is no much difference between male and female who goes for frog collection. And it is same with the Mizo tribe. There is not much difference, but in the Chakma tribe, majority of males are going for collection among the sample size, while females are not even half of the male population. So I asked the people, the community and the tribe who they think are responsible for frog collection. So in the blue community, majority of them think that is the forest department jobs to conserve frogs. There is a fluctuation between the response in the Mizo tribe, and many of them think that there is no need to conserve any frog. While in the Chakma tribe, they say that it's everyone's perception, it's everyone's duty to conserve frogs. So the second question is frog meat preferred over other cultural connotation? But given a choice, we found that among these 3 tribes, all of them prefer ungulates the most and birds the next. A small proportion of the blue and the Mizo community said that they prefer frogs, but there is no response from the Chakma tribe who prefers frogs the most. But in the questionnaire, we asked which common species that they are consuming. So these 7 species are the frogs that we found that locally they are consuming. And I also asked that do they use any frog parts as a traditional medicine. So I do not get any response from the Mizo and the blue tribe, but the Chakma tribe says that about 3% says that they take coats for cough and cold, treatment of cough and cold, and another 3% says that they take any kind of frogs so that it reduces the chance of getting any diseases. So with that I come to my discussion. There is higher species richness in the core, which is forming the results. But one interesting thing is that the species Amelos indo-burmanensis and Odorrana coronata are the most abundant species in both the streams. And comparing with the questionnaire survey, these 2 are one of the species that people say that they collect for consumption. So this is an interesting observation. It warrants further studies to see how this trend is growing. And the number of male encounters are higher than female, which is similar to previous studies done in male-female ratio. But one thing I have to mention here is that mostly people go for the large body frogs. So in adult size, female frogs are much larger than male frogs. So one possible reason could be that they collected female frogs because of their larger size. And population size, we cannot see the difference because most of the frogs are data deficient in the area, and we cannot have any comparison with previous studies. So found that 75% of the Chakma tribe, 75% of the Blue tribe, and 65% of the Mughal tribes collected frogs. And the rest of them preferred ambulance, the most is wild meat. But due to their livelihood status and the socio-economic status, they will go for any kind of wild meat they can find. So the limitation of the study was that the field visit was shortened due to the global pandemic, and there is a rainfall deficit in Northeast India during the pre-monsoon month, March to May, according to the Indian meteorological data. And the detailed ecological assessment of status of amphibian in the region is not carried out for any comparison. And concurrent market survey could not be carried out because of the pandemic. So by this we come to the conclusion that this study is a step to see how traditional practice of consuming wild meat is threatening the biodiversity of the region, and also that the communities are adapted to taking meat from wild sources, and it is part of their traditional cultural practice. And when we talk about conservation aspects, this group collagen is very debatable. So this is further studies to see if there is any other alternative. So the way forward of the study is that ecological study of particle fauna in Mizoram, and then we can do the long-term study to see how the species distribution is different between the core and buffer of any protected areas, and also the surveillance of disease threatening of human population. With that, I acknowledge discussion the Director of WIR, my supervisor, Dr. Navneet, my co-supervisors, Dr. Lalan and Dr. Samuel, Dr. Vishnu Priya Polipapa, Dr. Director of Faculties and C2C team, the Director of Ranger Forest, Forest Guards of Tampa Tiger Reserve, and my field assistants, Dr. Rupa, Dr. Anupul and Naitik, my classmates, families and friends, and finally I thank God for giving me this time. Thank you.
What happened about questions?
Yes, sir, we are inviting the questions from the audience.
It's a very nice presentation. I appreciate your effort. Even during the pandemic, you have collected this much data and presented well. Good. I have a few questions. The first one is that you have hypothesized that in buffer area be a lesser species number or species diversity, and core you are expected that to have more species diversity, right? And you have got the same result as well.
Yes, sir.
Why you have hypothesized like?
Sir, actually the objective was to see if the collection of frog is more in the buffer zone, and that was the hypothesis was made, and actually it seems true. Maybe also due to disturbances, the other species of frogs maybe are not present, or maybe there is some difficulty of detection probability which we don't know until we did further studies.
Okay, no problem. The thing is that in general, if the disturbance factor is at medium level, the species diversity is really higher, even if it is in the buffer area, than compared to the core area. And also you have mentioned that many species which are present in the core area, which is not detected in the buffer area.
Yes,
If you are able to differentiate what are the species present, why it is not present, whether is there any preference of the consumption of that particular species which is not available in the buffer area, that will be interesting result. And also you have mentioned that most of the species are data deficient, right?
Yes, sir.
Have you come across any threatened species in the crop?
No, sir. So while I was doing my study and while I was bringing my specimen from my study area also, I went to the forest department and asked for permission for the transportation of specimen. So they check all my species with the wildlife protection schedule. Again, they do not find any threatened or something. Maybe mainly because the areas are still very largely unstudied and we do not know the actual reality of the population.
Okay. So since most of the species are data deficient, is there any species are least concern or any categories concerned? Have you listed out that?
No, sir. I didn't do it.
Okay, no problem. For consumption category, it was not clear how many variables you have taken. What are the variables you have taken?
So, sir, we taken gender, age class, tribe, occupation, and yeah, that's it, sir.
Okay, fine, all, yeah, good.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Ralph, yeah. It's a very, I like the thought process of this study that, because generally not much effort has been, at least I haven't come up much publications, something which looks at this lower taxa and the cultural practices and everything, so I really like the thought process. But I have a small suggestion for you. The results are there, but actually what was, in my opinion, what was missing was your, the data. Basically, for example, even your questionnaire survey data also,
Yes, sir.
how actually did you plan your surveys? Right? Those kind of informations are missing from your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there might be, you might have less time or something, but whatever information you have collected, this must have done through a proper scientific procedures and thought process and something that you have followed, some particular approach you have followed.
Yes,
So
sir.
it would be actually very good to actually get some idea about those details also in your
Yes, sir.
presentation, so that we could actually make out and some inferences, meaningful inferences from those processes. Because right now, I just see the result, but I really do not know whether it has to do something to do with your effort or planning of your sampling strategies and stuff like that. So it would be good to actually get those information. I'm sure you probably would have included them in your thesis, but if you have not, you should do that in a much more detailed manner.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Volby, I just forgot to mention one thing regarding the anthropogenic pressure in the buffer area. If there is a moderate pressure, usually you get the higher number of diversity. If the disturbance are really higher, then only the diversity will be low. So you may please check that aspect and accordingly you can proceed for the publication.
Yes,
All
sir.
the best.
Yes, sir.
Valmya, if I'm correct, you are testing for offtake and not disturbance, right?
Pardon?
You are testing for offtake of frogs being more in the buffer than in the core, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you haven't collected any habitat variables in terms, because I heard you just say something about detection probability. So I just want to know if you collected any habitat variables where these different frogs are found. Is that something that you plan to do?
Ma'am, yes, further studies that would be one of the plan. But the reality was that, like, while doing the field survey itself, lockdown was announced, so we could not complete it. So I have to do whatever data are correct.
Okay, so no more question. Thank you, Alpriya, for the presentation. Thank you, audience, for your questions. With this, we come to the last presentation of the session, which is by Ms. Roshni Borgohain. She is going to present on assessing the impacts of road networks on wildlife corridors and mitigation measures in Assam, transportation against animal corridor. Over to Roshni.
Hello. Thank you, ma'am. So, good afternoon, everyone. First, I will start with the definition that is given by RSUA of the protected areas. Protected areas are the areas which is clearly defined as the geographical spaces recognized, dedicated and managed through the legal or other effective means to achieve the long-term conservation of nature with associated ecosystem services and the culture. And UNESCO has